reconciling the past in Zimbabwe. 4 decades after Robert Mugabe ordered North Korean-trained troops to kill political opponents in Matabeleland, will the government recognize atrocities? President Emmerson Mnangagwa says he wants to foster healing with a new initiative, but how far will it go for victims of the Gukurahundi massacre? I'm Andrea Sankey, and today's newsmaker is Zimbabwe. It's called the Gukurahundi Community Engagement Program, and the Zimbabwean government says it will allow survivors of 1980s massacres and atrocities to air their grievances via a series of village meetings. Traditional leaders will head up the process, but it's not completely clear how or if justice will be delivered to those who suffered. The victims themselves are particularly suspicious, given President Mnangagwa was in charge of national security under former leader Robert Mugabe when the atrocities occurred. Here's a look.
Zimbabwe is preparing to face one of the darkest parts of its history. Last month, President Emmerson Mnangagwa announced a reconciliation process over the political and ethnic killings by the army in the 1980s. An estimated 20,000 people were killed in what some describe as a genocide during the Gukurahundi massacre. Mnangagwa said the reconciliation initiative would heal the nation.
This exercise is not simply a mechanism for revisiting grievances. It's a transformative odyssey toward healing and national cohesion. This initiative is a potent symbol of our collective will to bridge the divides that have separated us for a long time.
The massacres took place just a few years after Zimbabwe's independence in 1980. Revolutionaries Robert Mugabe and Joshua Nkomo fought alongside each other against white rule, but they soon fell out. In 1982, then Prime Minister Mugabe fired Nkomo from the government, accusing him of plotting a coup. He then sent the North Korean-trained 5th Brigade to crack down on dissidents loyal to Nkomo's Zimbabwe African People's Union.
We are going all out now to crush them, and we'll crush them.
Between 1983 and 1987, the army targeted mostly the ethnic minority Ndebele communities in Matabeleland and Midlands provinces. The unit was accused of executions, rape, torture, and burning people alive. The government also sent hundreds to concentration camps.
It was harassing, hitting people, killing some. Many people were died here, being harassed by soldiers, killed, bayoneted by those knives of the guns.
The campaign of violence ended after Mugabe and Nkomo agreed to form a unity government. Their rival parties merged to form the Zimbabwe African National Union Patriotic Front, or Zanu-PF. Yet Mugabe never acknowledged the killings, and the investigation attempts during his reign went nowhere. But his removal from power in 2017 brought the Gukurahundi massacres to the spotlight once again. Newly appointed President Emmerson Mnangagwa was the security minister at the time of the atrocities, and some believe he played a central role in the operation.
We will never beg Mnangagwa to apologize or pay us, and we will never tell him what to do, because he knows what he did during Gukurahundi. He was there, his hands are dripping with blood.
Just like Mugabe, Mnangagwa has denied the allegations, but promised justice to survivors. With the new program, the local chiefs will lead the reconciliation process, which will include hearings for victims' testimonies, psychosocial support, and social benefits. But some survivors have little hope because of what they believe was Mnangagwa's role in the massacre. And as the Matabeleland region remains poor and underdeveloped, and ethnic Ndebele minorities feel marginalized, Zimbabwe's healing might prove to be more complex.
So will this initiative, the hearings, the handbooks, the guidelines, help Zimbabwe heal or potentially open new wounds? Well, joining me now to debate that and more are from Bulawayo, journalist and founder and director of the Center for Innovation and Technology, Zenzele Ndebele, and from Harare, the director of Zanu-PF's Information and Publicity Department, Farai Marapira. Thanks all so much for being with me. And now Zanu-PF has held very firmly onto power for 4 decades now. And many people in the administration have actually been implicated in what happened in Matabeleland in the 1980s, not least the president himself. So Zenzele, I'll start with you. Help us understand why this initiative is being taken now. What does the government really have to gain from it? And are you looking to even participating in it, if possible?
Thank you for the opportunity. I think let me start by saying that for the last maybe 30-something years, the government of Zimbabwe really never acknowledged that there was the Gukurahundi, I call it a genocide, that happened in Zimbabwe in the early 80s, where thousands of people were killed. So in the 80s and 90s, the official position was there was just the fight for dissidents and nothing happened. And civil society has been pushing and many others. It was only after military assisted transition that the Mnangagwa government engaged with civil society and started to talk about Gukurahundi, and Mnangagwa himself said people should talk about Gukurahundi openly, although you still find pockets of resistance from other sectors of the state. However, over the years, I think almost every year, President Mnangagwa has been meeting with civil society on this issue, eventually meeting the chiefs and then agreeing on this roadmap to have the victims talking to chiefs. I think it is from where we are starting, where we started, where there was total denial of that the Gukurahundi happened, to a situation. It's let's talk and get the chiefs to talk to people. I think it is a step in the right direction. I will attend the meetings and hear what the people have to say. And it is important that the people of Zimbabwe find closure. And of course, the situation is not perfect, or the whole system is not perfect. There are so many other elements that are lacking in the process. But it is a start, and I think people need a closure. They need to talk about this issue. And if the president says he's willing to talk about it, let's call him on his bluff.
Okay, interesting. Farai, is it about closure for the victims, or is there something else the government feels needs to be really accomplished here? Because it shouldn't have been too difficult, given the position of Zanu-PF, to kind of try to ignore this and allow time to just let it somewhat disappear. I mean, the victims are getting older and older. The government didn't necessarily have to engage. In fact, some members of the ruling party aren't all that happy about it. But why do you think it is necessary and good for Zimbabwe?
I think the words of the president himself, excuse me, sum this up the best. And thank you for having me, and greetings to my fellow panelists. The president himself that this process, this Gukurahundi community outreach program, is so that the scars of yesterday no longer fester but become stepping stones to a brighter future. At the end of the day, the only noble thing, the only true mark of leadership is to address these issues, is to find closure, is to have communities talking about this, so that in the future we do not continue to have a divided society. So I believe that this is a very noble step that has been taken, and it is very necessary that as Zimbabweans, we look and deal with this painful part of our history, we address it, and we find closure from it.
Okay.
So I believe this is not any process of burying anything under the rug, but to ensure that true closure comes out and we build a brighter future for our country in unity.
Then, Farai, is the president ready to assume some responsibility here? He seems to have consistently denied having anything to do with any of the events that took place throughout the massacres that took place, I should say, throughout the 1980s, even though he was in charge of national security. So it's interesting because some even criticize him for using Mugabe as almost a scapegoat in order to put this all behind Zanu-PF. So how will the president actually address what many see as his implication in what happened?
Well, the president has been denying this ever since even when President Mugabe was still in office. When he was vice president, I remember a time when he made it clear that he was not involved. And I believe as this issue is dealt with and everything is openly discussed, the truth of the matter shall come out. At the end of the day, I think the reality of how this went has to come out if this process is to be as genuine as possible. So I believe that the truth of the matters will come out, who exactly is liable collectively, singularly, is something that is going to come out as well.
Okay, Zenzele, let me come back to you then, because, I mean, this is the problem for many of the victims here, is that not only do they believe that many members of the current administration were involved in the massacres that happened and are refusing to take responsibility for it, they're also still scared, and that they don't trust this process enough to speak out and participate. So where will that leave these hearings going forward if the victims are too scared to use their voice?
Yeah, I think we will realize that one of the effects of Gukurahundi or any experience like that, the people are afraid, and the fear lasts for even the first generation, moves on to the other generation. What happens with this process, which I think will make people talk, is that the people are going to go and talk to their chiefs in their communities, and they will not be an outsider, which is a strength and also a weakness. So people are going to sit down with their chiefs and talk about what happened to their chiefs, and then those messages or whatever the outcome of the hearings are going to be taken to somewhere else. So where I mean, me as a journalist and someone who has covered the issues of Gukurahundi for the last 15 years or so, where I have a worry about is that what happens when the message has been taken to all the chiefs have listened to people and have recorded. What happens after that? Remember, this is not the first time such an attempt is done. During the Gukurahundi itself, there was the Zimbabwe Commission, which went into the communities, talked to people. The report was never published. And over the years, there have been different attempts to solve this issue or talk about this issue, and the attempts have not been successful. So right now, after the people have talked to the chiefs, will the process be seen to the finality? Is there a report that is going to be published that says, yes, people have talked, they said this is what they've experienced, this is the report, and from here we are taking step A, B, C, D. Those are the issues. And of course, the element of fear is to remember there are people, I mean, just yesterday, I was talking to someone who is in a refugee camp in Dukwe, which is in Botswana. They left during Gukurahundi in 1982. And up to today, they are afraid to come back home because they think that they will be targeted. Despite numerous efforts to try and bring them home, they're still afraid. So the fear is there. And I hope that the government, whoever is going to be involved in the process, is going to assure people that those who speak out at these conferences, I mean, at these hearings, are not going to be victimized. That's the only assurance that they can have. But I guess it happened, and people need to talk about it, or else, you know, generations are dying, and these stories are going with them.
Yeah. So, Farai, what will the government do to reassure people, and including those that have gone abroad and have stayed abroad since because of the fear of returning and what could happen to them? How is the government going to reassure these people that they will not be in danger if they speak out against the government in power today?
This process in itself, as I was saying, this process in itself is going to give those that have any fears the confidence to realize that our country is at a stage where we are stronger when we deal with our issues. We are trying to deal with any fractures, any discordance within our. So definitely one of the major reasons we have taken traditional leaders to be a part of this and to lead this from the front is because these are the leaders within these communities. These are trusted leaders within these communities. And we believe that the people within under these chieftainships will feel freer speaking to their chiefs, and this can actually lead to more closure and a better sense of security as we proceed. But for a fact, there is no retribution that can come from anyone speaking on what has occurred, because this is essentially what needs to be documented. This story needs to be told, this story needs to be documented, and this story needs to be a lesson to us all as we proceed as a country on how not to deal with differences between ourselves. So I believe that this is the major reason the president has set this up, so that as a country, we can come together, we can learn. Because we do not only learn from our high points, we also learn from our low points. So there's no retribution in this. It is an opportunity for us to come together as a country, to become more united from this. For even from mistakes, we become one, and we can learn and become better.
But Zenzele, what outcome or outcomes do the victims actually want? We've heard about reparations. Do you think reparations in this case would be appropriate? Would it give a sense of justice served? Because, and you can also explain this as well, the region is still suffering today, both psychologically and developmentally. And some say that is actually still a result of the many people that ran the so-called ethnic cleansing that they believe happened this many years ago. They're still suffering from it today.
Yeah, I don't want to really prescribe what the people would want, but I just want to point a few things. I mean, having spent so many years talking about the issue of Gukurahundi and documenting it, I've never met someone who says they want revenge. So that's one thing that is clear, that people want closure in many different ways. I know that there are people who, up to today, they don't know what happened to their relatives. They don't know what happened to their fathers. They don't know what happened to their mothers, to their grandfathers. And people want to know what happened to their fathers and where are they buried, so that they can go there and do cultural issues. We are Black people. We have cultural practices that we do. We believe in life after death, and people want that closure. There are people who are buried in mass graves. And people, what they want is reburials. For us, burying a relative or a parent or whoever in the most dignified way and putting a tombstone is very important. So people want that kind of closure. And of course, there are people who still don't have, who are using wrong surnames, or, who don't have birth certificates and death certificates for their parents. So they want those identity documents so that they can move on. But they also want to put, in a memorial plaques where their relatives died, like any other person, so that every year they can go. We are celebrating Heroes Day today, and we have a National Heroes Acre where we go and celebrate the lives of those who sacrificed their lives during the liberation struggle. And people also want to go and, to say, here lies our father who died in 1982 during Gukurahundi. That can't be a crime. But they find it difficult sometimes to do that. So there are people who are in the army, there are people who are teachers, there are people who were police officers, who were civil servants, who disappeared in the early 80s. Their kids never got pensions. They never managed to change properties into their names, and some of them lost their properties. Those are the real things that people want. Practical, some will say, low-hanging fruits that I think need to be addressed before we talk about the bigger picture of, reparations, and how we need a formula. How do you reparate? How do you compensate the community?
Farai, how quickly is the government ready to just address the low-hanging fruit that Zenzele was describing?
Well, I believe the first stage is what is in process. And this first stage is not a process that can be hurried, because this is a process of documenting each and every complaint. And I would like to appreciate and totally agree with what my brother Zenzele has just said in its entirety. People are after closure. There is no sense of revenge within us as a society, but even in those that might not be directly affected, it is an issue that people want closure. People want to know. We cannot just sweep our mistakes and sweep our bad history under the carpet. We want to deal with it, we want to address it, and we want to learn from it, because we build tomorrow by learning from yesterday. So this is essentially what we're looking at. And I believe as soon as the documentation, which is what is going to take a lot of time, the documentation of these issues has been done, it is a faster process for government to actually start acting on these reports as after they've come in. But we cannot hurry the process, because this is an emotive process, especially in the people that are opening up, the people that have been victims, the people that have experiences. So we cannot hurry a person to
Do you think, Farai, though, this will ultimately, will this process, ultimately serve Zimbabwe the way South Africa's post-apartheid Truth and Reconciliation Commission, for example, served South Africa in moving forward?
Definitely, this process is going to build a better Zimbabwe because these issues need to be addressed. These issues need to be looked into. They cannot be ignored. These issues I support the president 100% in his initiative. And we have people like my brother Zenzele. They'll be also there. They are part of the system that is checks and balances. They'll be looking at this. They'll be highlighting any mistakes, any errors they feel are there. And we encourage them to be open and communicate where they feel there needs to be a tweaking within the system of collecting this data, and so that we come up with something that is wholesome, something which is acceptable to us all, something which gives us the true agenda of this mission by the president to create closure and build a better Zimbabwe with more oneness and
Zenzele,
build a better tomorrow.
Fair enough. Let me put the same question to you then. I mean, maybe Zimbabweans don't like that comparison, but we have heard it before that this process could serve Zimbabwe similar to how the Truth and Reconciliation in post-apartheid South Africa served South Africans. Do you think it's the same, or do you want different results from what's happening here?
Well, I don't think it's the same process. The Truth and Reconciliation had its own challenges. It was not a perfect process, but they are definitely different. We are talking about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. This is not a truth commission because victims are meeting on their own and talking about what happened. It's not a situation where those who are said to have perpetrated the atrocities are there and the victims are there. So it is a different process. And I think at the end of the day, this process is going to be judged based on whether it is going to allow victims to get closure. And after the victims have said whatever they want, is the government going to follow up and make sure that they own up to what they've said? If the government says, we want to give you closure, we want you to deal with this issue, and then after 2 years from now, we will still be asking, where is the report? Then there will be a challenge. And
how much would an apology matter?
Well, I think in my culture, you don't ask for an apology. The person who has wronged you should see it fit to say, I have wronged this person, let me apologize. An apology that you have begged for has no meaning. So, and I hope that it's not about us just, the government says, okay, sorry, let's move on. Let's deal with issues that are affecting people. And these are the issues that I mentioned: reburials, looking for the relatives who are not there, documentation. Then after all these things have done, then the government can say, you know what, we realize that we made a blunder and we are sorry. Remember, it has taken 100 years for many other countries to deal with the issues like this, in Namibia and many other countries. So we are only 44 years into this, and it's not going to go away just because we are talking about it. It will only go away when people solve it, and that will not stop people from talking about it anyway.
Farai, I'm wondering what you make of that, because if it ultimately does lead to the proof whereby members of the government are proven to have had some responsibility in this, and they're expected to say, okay, I have wronged these people, will they be prepared to do so?
Well, this is a process, and I believe at the end of the day, as the process goes and accountability is established, I don't see any problem with people taking accountability, because at the end of the day, this is what we're after. We're not after retribution. We're not after soiling of images. We're not after demonizing one another. We are after dealing with the painful part of our history, which is our primary concern, dealing with the painful part of our history, giving closure to the victims, and taking lessons as a country. So there is no sense of retribution in this. There is no sense of animosity. There is no sense of vindictiveness.
Okay, I mean that's you've stated that. Yeah, I'm just
with the agenda of resolving.
Quickly though, I just wanted to bring up before we go. Your Secretary for Information for Zanu-PF, he wrote an article for the Zimbabwe Herald that he's saying that there will be safeguards to prevent fabrications and creative testimonies from some mischief makers emanating from outside the local communities. What does that mean exactly? Who will they consider mischief makers Because that, in some would say, that kind of opens the door to accusations that people are fabricating stories when they're telling what happened to them 40 years ago.
I believe, as we all know, whenever there's an issue which needs human testimony, it is subject to various challenges, and I believe that is one of them, possible challenges. We do not believe from the onset that there will be malice intended, but we need to put safeguards in case such issues occur. It is part of human nature for people to use hyperbole or to even give false witness and false testimony. And this is why essentially we've used the chiefs, because the chiefs know the families within their purvey, and the chiefs know, essentially have a history. These are chiefs that were also victims in a way. They're part of this. They witnessed this process.
Okay.
So the best people to lead are the people that were leading them, so that we ensure that we capture a true story and not a false narrative.
Okay. Farai, that will have to be the final word for this edition of the Newsmakers. I'd like to thank both of you so much for being with us. Greatly appreciated. And our viewers, of course, for joining us as well. Remember, you can follow us on X, and do be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We'll see you next time.